Hello dear students, welcome on my YouTube channel Learn 8th Standard English Textbook. Myself Bhagwan Sarode from Gokhale Education Society's JDC Bitco English Medium High School, Nasik Road. In previous video, we had learned figures of speech that are personification, alliteration, repetition and epigram. Dear students, today we are going to learn second lesson, that is Unit 1.2, Dick Whittington and his cat. Everyone in England knows of the story of the Dick Whittington and his cat. This is the story of the poor boy who becomes Lord Mayor of London. Now let's learn the story of Dick Whittington. There was once a poor boy called Dick Whittington who lived in a small village in south of England. He had no proper home, for both his parents had died and he was unkindly treated by many of the villagers. One day, Dick overheard someone say that the streets of London were paved with gold, and he decided that he will go there at once and pick his fortune up in gold pieces from the streets. For he thought people might treat him more kindly if he were rich. Students, Dick Whittington is a poor boy whose mother and father have both died. He lives in a poor area of England. He has nothing to eat and no work. He stays alive by eating whatever scraps he can find and begs for. So that he was unkindly treated by villagers. He has heard exciting stories about a glorious city called London, whose streets are paved with gold. Dick decided to go to London to change his fortune, hoping that people would treat him kindly if he became rich. Next, so young Dick set out to walk to London. He had not gone far when a man in a cart stopped and asked him if he was running away from home. "I have no home," Dick answered. "I'm on my way to London to find my fortune." "I'm going to London myself," said the carter. "Jump up here beside me and we will journey together." They arrived in London just before nightfall, and the carter left Dick and made his way to an inn. Poor Dick stood alone and looked around him in dismay. Where was all that fine gold? All he could see were dirty streets and lots of unfriendly people. He had nowhere to sleep, and in the end he spent the night in the corner of an alley where he hoped he would come to no harm. Glossary. Dismay. It means great disappointment. Alley. It means a narrow passage between or behind buildings. One day, Dick met a friendly carter who was going to London. Dick traveled with Carter to London. London was a big city. It's full of people, both rich and poor. When he arrives in London, however, Dick is very disappointed cause he could not find any streets that were paved with gold. He only could see were dirty streets and lots of unfriendly people. He spent whole night in the corner of an alley. The next morning, Dick woke up cold, miserable, and very hungry. He wandered around begging for food, but again and again people shouted at him, "Go away, you lazy fellow! Be off with you!" and aimed angry blows at his head. At last he collapsed in the street and lay there, too weak to look further for food. By chance, Dick had fallen in front of a house belonging to a rich merchant called Mr. Fitzwarren. The cook was trying to drive Dick away. When Mr. Fitzwarren returned home from inspecting his ships, he stopped and said to Dick, "Why don't you work if you need food?" "I will work," said Dick, "but I know Nobody who will give me anything to do. Take him into the kitchen. Mr. Fitzwarren ordered the cook. Feed him first and then find some work for him. The next morning, when Dick woke up, he was very hungry. So he wandered around begging for food. But people shouted at him. Some peoples angrily blows at his head. At last he collapsed in the street and lay there. By chance, Dick had fallen near Mr. Fitzwarren's house, who was a rich merchant. He was also a good and generous man. He took Dick into his house and gave him some food to eat. So, Dick was given a home and a living. He had a small corner of the attic to sleep in, and his job was to help the cook with all his pots and pans in the kitchen. Dick's life should have been much better than before, but he still had two difficulties to face. First was that the attic he slept in was overrun by rats and mice. At night, they scampered all over him and kept him awake. After a time, he solved this problem by saving the few pennies he was paid and buying himself a cat. In no time at all, the cat chased away all the rats and mice, and Dick was able to sleep peacefully. The other difficulty, which was not so easy to overcome, was the cook's bad temper. She shouted and screamed all day and would scold Dick and hit him with a wooden spoon, even when he was working as hard as he could. Glossary: Attic. It means a very small room inside a pointed roof. Scamper. It means ran here and there. Dick was given a small room to live. His job was to help the cook in the kitchen. Dick's life should have been much better than before, but he still had two difficulties to face. The first difficulty was rats and mice. At night, they ran here and there, so that Dick could not sleep peacefully. He solved this problem by buying himself a cat. The second difficulty was not easy to overcome. It was the cook's bad temper. She shouted all day and scolded Dick and also hit him with wooden spoon. Early the next morning, before the cook was up, they set out with his cat to seek his fortune elsewhere. The two of them walked as far as Holloway. On their way out of London, then Dick sat down on a stone to rest. It was the 1st of November, All Saints' Day, and the church bells were ringing. As Dick sat and listened it seemed they were ringing out a message for him. Turn again, Whittington, the worthy citizen, Lord Mayor of London. Lord Mayor of London, said Dick. I should like to be Lord Mayor and ride in a fine coach. I can put up with a few scoldings from the cook, if that is what is in store for me. So Dick and his cat retraced their steps to Mr. Fitzwarren's house. Luckily, they were able to sleep back before they had been missed. Glossary: Put up with. It means tolerate. Early the next morning, Dick decided to leave the house of Mr. Fitzwarren with his cat to change his fortune. After a few distance walking, Dick sat down on a stone to rest. All Saints' Day and the church bell were ringing. As Dick sat down and listened it seemed that they were giving message for him. So Dick decided to return to Mr. Fitzwarren's house. Luckily, they were able to return before they had been missed. Now, Mr. Fitzwarren used to send ships far across the sea to trade with other countries. He would load a ship with goods for the captain, and ships crew to sail in faraway places, and then they would bring back goods that could be sold at home. One day he called his household together. I am sending a ship to the African coast to trade, he said. Would any one of you like to send something of yours on it? You can then share in the profits if the voyage is successful. Everyone produced something except for Dick, who had nothing to offer. Have you nothing of your own, Dick? Asked Mr. Fitzwarren kindly. And Dick replied, only my cat. Then let your cat go on the ship, said Mr. Fitzwarren. His daughter Alice said, Dick loves his cat. Let me put something in for him. But her father said, no, it must be his, not something belonging to someone else. So Dick fetched his cat and said goodbye to it sadly. The captain of ship was delighted, for the cat was an excellent mouser, and so he had no trouble with rats and mice on his voyage. Glossary Mouser. It means an animal that catches mice. Now, Mr. Fitzwarren used to send ships for across the sea to trade with other countries, and he also would bring back goods that could be sold at home. One day he called all his servants and he asked to everyone, would any of you like to send something of yours on ship? You can share in profits if this trade is successful. Everyone sent something for trade on ship across the sea, except poor Dick. So Mr. Fitzwarren kindly asked to Dick, have you nothing of your own? Dick replied, only my cat. Mr. Fitzwarren said, then let your cat go on ship. So Dick fetched his cat and said goodbye to it sadly. The captain of ship was delighted for the cat, and so he had no trouble with rats and mice on his ship. After some months, the ship arrived at a place on the African coast, Barbary, where people call the Moors live. The captain sent a message to the king to say he had fine goods for sale and he was invited to the palace to show them. While he was talking to the king and queen, some dishes of foods were brought in, but almost immediately rats and mice ran up and before the captain's eyes at all the food. The captain was astonished and asked if this was what normally happened. Alas, yes, came the reply. The country is suffering from a plague of rats and mice, and we cannot get rid of them. Glossary Plague. It means a thing that causes great trouble. I think I may have the answer on my ship, said the captain. And he sent a message asking for Dick's cat to be brought to the palace. More food was laid out, and the rats and mice appear as before. The cat immediately pounced, killing at least a dozen before they scatter. Everyone was delighted, and the queen asked, what do you call this animal? Puss is the name she answers to, said the captain. And when the queen called, Puss, Puss, the cat went over to her and purred. The queen was a little alarmed at first, as she had seen how fiercely the cat had attacked the rats and mice. But the captain told her not to be anxious. Puss is very friendly with the people, he said, and will soon rid your kingdom of rats and mice. I would give great wealth to own this animal, said the queen. After some months, the ship arrived at a place on the African coast, Barbary. The captain was invited to the king's palace to show his goods, but while talking, he saw that rats and mice at all the foods laid out. The captain asked, does this happen always? The king said, yes. The country is suffering from a plague of rats and mice, but I cannot get solution of it. The captain said, I have the answer to your problem. Then the cat was brought in the palace. It immediately kill at least a dozen rat and mice. Everyone was delighted. This animal is called Puss. This cat will soon ride off your kingdom of rats and mice. The queen said to the captain, I would give great wealth to own this animal. So the captain began bargaining, and it was agreed that the king would buy the whole cargo from Mr. Fitzwarren's ship to pay a fine price for it. And for the cat alone, the king paid 10 times the sum again. When the ship come back to the part of London, the captain showed Mr. Fitzwarren the gold and jewels he had brought from Barbary, and told him the story of the cat. The merchant sent for Dick. From now on, Dick, he said, we would all call you Mr. Whittington, for you are a rich man. Mr. Fitzwarren then paid him all the money the captain had received for the cat. From this time on, Dick worked with Mr. Fitzwarren and became a successful merchant himself. He married Mr. Fitzwarren's daughter Alice, and 3 times he was elected Lord Mayor of London. He was also in time knighted by the king and became Sir Richard Whittington. He was not only famous, but he was popular too, for he always helped the poor with his money. Sometimes, when he was old, he would tell his grandchildren the story of his cat and how the bells of London had called him back when he was only a poor boy. Turn again, Whittington, thou worthy citizen, Lord Mayor of London. Glossary. Knighted. It means given a highly honored title. The king was ready to buy all the goods from Mr. Fitzwarren's ship at good price. For the cat alone, the king paid 10 times sum separately. When the ship came back to London, the captain showed Mr. Fitzwarren the gold and jewels he had brought from Barbary and told him the story of the cat. Then Dick became a rich person, so Mr. Fitzwarren called him Mr. Whittington. Mr. Fitzwarren then paid Dick all the money the captain had received for the cat. From then on, Dick worked with Mr. Fitzwarren and he became a rich merchant. He married Mr. Fitzwarren's daughter Alice and he was elected Lord Mayor of London. He was an honor by the king and he became Sir Richard Whittington. Dick always helped the poor with his money so that he became famous and popular. Sometimes, when he was old, he would tell his grandchildren the story of his cat and how the bells of London church had called him back when he was only a poor boy. The message Dick heard from the bells, it was, Turn again, Whittington, though worthy of citizen, Lord Mayor of London. Thus, today we have learned the story of poor boy Dick Whittington, who becomes Lord Mayor of London. Dear students, homework for you. Complete the question number 1 to 4 from English workshop exercise in your notebook. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.